Have you ever found yourself thinking so much about something that you end up not doing anything about it? Whether it's a simple decision or an important choice, overthinking can become an invisible and silent prison. And the worst part is that we don't even realize how much it robs us of time, energy, and clarity. Before continuing, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. If you like videos that combine ancient wisdom with practical solutions for modern life, this content was made for you. We live in an era of constant stimuli. There are notifications, expectations, demands, comparisons, and decisions. Lots of decisions. What to wear, what to eat, which route to take, what to say, what to avoid. Our brain, faced with so many variables, often goes into overload mode. And when this happens, what we know as analysis paralysis arises. Analysis paralysis is the mental state in which we think so much about a situation, trying to predict all possible outcomes, that we end up freezing. Instead of taking action, we get stuck in a cycle of doubts, fears, and justifications. With each new cycle of thinking, anxiety grows and confidence diminishes. And it happens to everyone, from students dealing with exams or career choices, to overwhelmed professionals, worried parents, stuck creators, and people who just want to find peace. Overthinking can seem harmless, even helpful. After all, thinking before acting is a good thing, right? Yes, to a certain extent. But when thinking becomes a substitute for action, the balance is thrown off. That's where the wisdom of someone who lived centuries ago comes in. In a time without social media, without cell phones, without busy schedules, but with battles much more lethal than ours. Someone who literally had to make split-second decisions to avoid dying. That man was Miyamoto Musashi. Musashi was a legendary warrior of feudal Japan. He won more than 60 sword duels, most of them to the death. But his legacy goes far. Beyond physical combat, he left behind profound teachings on strategy, self-control, focus, and mental clarity. And surprisingly, many of these ideas serve as a direct antidote to the overthinking we face today. In this video, we'll dive into Musashi's most powerful principles for overcoming doubt, hesitation, and mental chaos. We'll learn how he trained his mind to act calmly in the face of uncertainty, and how you can apply these same strategies to find greater peace, focus, and confidence in your own decisions. The idea here is not to exalt an ancient warrior as a distant hero, but rather to show that within Musashi's life and philosophy there are practical, simple, and applicable lessons. He understood better than anyone that the mind can be both our most powerful weapon and our worst enemy. Throughout this video, you'll see how small mindset and attitude shifts can help reduce anxiety, improve your focus, and most importantly, get you back into action, even when things feel hazy. And to begin this journey, we first need to know more about Miyamoto Musashi. Who was this man who, even living in a time so different from ours, was already searching for the same answers that we still seek today? Who was Miyamoto Musashi, and why does he matter? Miyamoto Musashi was not just a samurai. He was perhaps the greatest combat strategist of feudal Japan. He was born in 1584, at a time marked by civil wars, rival clans, and deadly duels. While still very young, he fought his first duel, and won. Over the course of his life, he accumulated more than 60 victories in one-on-one combat, something practically unheard of. But what really sets Musashi apart is not just the number of victories, but what he did in between them. Musashi trained obsessively, not just his body, but especially his mind. He didn't just fight with the sword. He fought against fear, against doubt, against the thoughts that could sabotage his actions in decisive moments. This quest for mastery of the mind led him to become a philosopher, artist, and writer. In his final years, secluded in a cave, Musashi wrote two texts that encapsulate his worldview: the Book of Five Rings and the Dokkōdō. The latter, a set of 21 principles of life that he wrote just days before his death. The Book of Five Rings is a work focused on strategy, but it goes far beyond the battlefield. It talks about rhythm, perception, clarity, emotional distance, and how to keep the mind free even in extreme moments. The Dokkōdō, more concise and direct, brings lessons such as accept everything exactly as it is, do not seek pleasure for its own sake, have no regrets, don't think unnecessarily. This last one is particularly powerful. Don't think unnecessarily. In just 4 words, Musashi summarizes what many of us have struggled to practice our entire lives: mental silence, focusing on the essential, the freedom to not be held hostage by our own thoughts. And why does Musashi matter today? Because the battle of the mind has not ended with swords. It has simply changed its setting. Today, our struggles are internal: insecurities, decisions, expectations, distractions, anxiety. And just as a swordsman needs to have a clear mind to act in milliseconds, we also need clarity to deal with modern life. Musashi's legacy is a reminder that action comes from a disciplined mind, not from an overworked mind. He understood that it's not about eliminating thoughts, but about mastering them, directing them, and that's more relevant than ever. Now that we understand who this master of clarity and focus was, it's time to dive into one of the biggest enemies he fought, and one we also face every day: overthinking. The trap of the modern mind, overthinking. You've probably been there, lying in bed ready to fall asleep when your mind starts racing. What if I had done things differently? Will it work out tomorrow? What if I fail? What starts as a simple reflection turns into an avalanche of thoughts. One after another, the ideas pile up and rest is gone. This phenomenon has a name: overthinking. In theory, thinking is a good thing. Reflecting, pondering, planning, all of these things help us make better decisions. But when this process goes too far, it becomes a burden. And the more we think, the less we act. Overthinking creates an illusion of control, when in reality we are simply moving away from reality. We live in the age of information and comparison. Social media, real-time news, alerts, messages, advice, pressure. We are bombarded all the time. Our brain, which was shaped to deal with simple decisions and more stable contexts, now needs to process dozens, even hundreds, of micro-decisions per day. This is tiring, and this mental fatigue leads us to overthink, even when it is not necessary. Think about how many times you have. He procrastinated because he was afraid of making a mistake. He mentally replayed a conversation that hadn't even happened yet. He created fictitious scenarios to try to prepare himself. He felt exhausted from not stopping thinking. Overthinking paralyzes us. Instead of doing, we get stuck in a cycle of analysis, doubt, and self-questioning. Worse, anxiety grows because the mind seeks to predict the unpredictable, and that is never possible. The future, by definition, is not controllable, and trying to control it mentally is like running on a treadmill. You get tired, but you don't move forward. Now here's an important point. Overthinking is not a sign of weakness. In fact, it often stems from a genuine desire to do the right thing. People who are conscientious, sensitive, and concerned about others and their own future tend to fall into this trap more easily. Overthinking, in a way, is an attempt to avoid pain, whether from a mistake, a judgment, or a failure. But avoiding pain at all costs often prevents us from living fully. This is why understanding and dealing with overthinking is so important. And if this content has made you reflect in a useful way, leave your like on the video. This helps a lot to spread this type of knowledge and shows that this topic also makes sense to you. But what to do then in the face of this storm of thoughts? How to act when the mind insists on trapping us in a maze of what-ifs? This is where the wisdom of Miyamoto Musashi comes in. A man who had no time to hesitate. Every second lost in doubt could cost him his life. And yet, he was not cold or impulsive. He was lucid, focused, present. Musashi developed a practical philosophy of life, a way of thinking, or rather, of not thinking unnecessarily. He understood that the mind needs direction and that overthinking is a silent poison that robs us of the strength to act. Contrary to what many people think, he was not a warrior who acted on impulse. He was someone who trained his mind as rigorously as his body, someone who chose to live lightly, even while carrying a sword. In the next chapter, we'll explore just that, how Musashi thought, what his principles were for keeping the mind sharp and quiet in the midst of chaos, and most importantly, how we can apply this same wisdom to modern life. The power of clarity, how Musashi thought and acted. Miyamoto Musashi understood that winning a fight was not just a matter of technique, it was a matter of mental clarity. To him, the mind was the most important battlefield. A warrior who was confused, hesitant, or overwhelmed by thoughts was already defeated. That is why his true training was silent, internal, and constant. Musashi saw clarity as a survival tool. He knew that in critical moments, overthinking could be fatal, but that doesn't mean he despised reasoning. Quite the opposite. What he rejected was useless, scattered thinking that didn't lead to action. This was what he called unnecessary thinking. This phrase, found in the Dokkōdō, carries direct force. Don't think unnecessarily. 4 words, one principle that could change lives. In a world where we are taught to reflect, ponder, and plan, Musashi proposed the opposite, to simplify. He did not suggest ignoring reason, but using it with precision. For him, thinking should be like the stroke of a sword, quick, direct, accurate. In the Book of 5 Rings, he writes, "You must understand that there is rhythm in combat, as there is rhythm in music. Those who move against the rhythm are lost." Here, Musashi talks about attunement, about being present enough to act at the right time, neither before nor after. And this is only possible with a clear mind, with a sharp perception, free from internal noise. Clarity for him is a state that arises from discipline and detachment, from the ability to see what matters and ignore the rest. This detachment manifests itself in another principle: don't cling to anything, not even to thought. Musashi saw attachment as an obstacle. Clinging to ideas, fears, or results created rigidity, and rigidity breaks. He wanted a mind that was fluid, adaptable, light. And how did he achieve this? With constant practice. Musashi believed that the mind needed to be trained like the body. His days were filled with repetition, observation, and self-discovery. He drew, sculpted, and wrote, not to be an artist but to cultivate focus. Each activity was a mental training ground. There was no time for distraction. Applying this philosophy today means rethinking our relationship with thoughts. It means stopping believing that every idea needs to be analyzed, that every doubt needs an answer, that every fear needs to be faced in the mind. Sometimes the answer doesn't come from thinking more, it comes from doing less. Musashi was not a superhuman. He was someone who understood that life requires movement, and that thinking too much is often just a way of avoiding that movement. Now that we understand how he thought, we can begin to translate this philosophy into concrete actions. In the next chapter, we will look at the first practical strategy Musashi used to avoid being overcome by doubt, taking action before thinking becomes paralyzed. Strategy 1. Action over doubt. In a duel of life and death, there is no time for hesitation. Musashi knew this better than anyone. A moment of doubt could be the difference between life and death. And although our battles today do not involve swords, the same principle applies. Doubt paralyzes, and paralysis keeps us from the life we want to build. So his first major mental strategy was simple and brutally effective. Act before doubt sets in. In the Book of 5 Rings, Musashi says, "Doubt is the worst of evils." He was not referring to rational doubt, but to the doubt that arises from fear, insecurity, and a distorted self-image. The doubt that grows the more we think, until action becomes impossible. When we let our minds wander too much, they start to create stories. What if I fail? What if the timing isn't right? What if I'm not good enough? These questions rarely lead to a real answer. They just create more questions. And so time passes, opportunity slips away, and what's left is regret. Musashi, on the other hand, trained himself to act decisively. He trusted his own preparation. He knew that there is no way to have absolute control over everything, and that waiting for total certainty is waiting forever. So he developed the ability to act with what he had, at the moment that action was needed. In practice, this can be translated into our daily lives in a very simple way. One of the techniques inspired by this philosophy is the 10-second rule. If you have an idea that you know could be useful, sending a message, starting a task, making a simple decision, act on it within 10 seconds. If you wait longer than that, your rational mind starts to build resistance. Fear sets in. Doubt takes over. Another practice is doing as little as possible. We often think that we need to make big moves, but in fact, a small step can break inertia. Musashi did not wait for an ideal moment. He created rhythm in action. This strategy is especially useful for those who feel like they're always putting off what's important. It doesn't require extreme courage, it requires action. A small gesture that signals to your brain, I'm a doer. What about you? Have you ever been trapped by doubt at some point in your life? Have you ever postponed a simple action because you thought too much? Share in the comments what situation you are facing right now and what small action could help you get out of your rut. Maybe your example will help other people too. In the next chapter, we'll explore Musashi's second strategy, detachment from the outcome and the importance of focusing on the present, a principle that can free you from anxiety and self-sabotage. Strategy 2, detachment from the result and focus on the present. One of the biggest sources of overthinking is obsession with the future. The constant question, what if it doesn't work out, is a silent generator of anxiety. We live trapped in expectations, goals, and comparisons, and so our minds are almost always focused on what hasn't happened yet, or on what could have been different in the past. Musashi understood early on that this kind of attachment to results is a trap. In his works, he makes it clear, victory is not in the future, it is in the now. He did not fight to win, he fought to act correctly. The result was a natural consequence of full presence. This way of thinking is powerful, because when you act with an eye on the outcome, you create pressure, and under pressure, the mind tends to sabotage itself. It starts imagining failure, rejection, judgment. But when you focus on the present moment, on the gesture, the movement, the process, clarity increases, and fear loses its power. One of the principles of Dokkōdō says, do not seek success by false means. This means, do not act only seeking applause, recognition, or numbers. Act with coherence, discipline, and truth. Are results important? Yes, but they are not the basis of your identity. This principle has a direct application in modern life. How many times have you stopped trying something because you were afraid you wouldn't reach the right level? Have you compared yourself to others and given up before you even started? Have you sought perfection and been frustrated because you couldn't maintain it? Musashi invites us to reverse this logic. He says, forget what you will gain. Focus on what you are doing now. True freedom comes from detachment from the outcome. Practicing this means, for example, write without thinking about likes, study without seeking immediate performance, train without obsessing over aesthetics, chat without waiting for approval. When you shift your focus from the outcome to the process, something changes inside you. You become lighter, your mind slows down, your body responds better, and, interestingly, the results start to come more naturally, precisely because you stopped chasing them. Musashi was not a dreamer, he was a strategist, and he knew that the only thing you can control is the now, the present, your breathing, your posture, your decision to continue. Everything else slips through your fingers. A useful exercise is to ask yourself a simple question before taking any action. What is up to me right now? This question brings the mind back. It takes the focus off the what if and puts it on the what is. In today's fast-paced world, learning to slow down internally is an art, and it is this art that allows action to come with more authenticity, more lightness, and less fear. In the next chapter, we'll see how Musashi cultivated this mindset with something very concrete, daily training and mental discipline. Because it's not enough to understand what to do, you have to practice every day. Strategy 3. The path of daily training and mental discipline. Musashi did not become Japan's greatest swordsman through talent alone. He became a legend because of his daily commitment to perfection. His life was one of practice, repetition, and attention to detail. Every movement, every gesture, every choice was part of an ongoing process of discipline. He understood that mastery does not come from moments of inspiration. It comes from quiet constancy. In his works, discipline appears as a foundation. He said that the true path is the one that is followed every day, even without desire, even without applause. Because it is through repetition that the mind becomes stronger. And a strong mind is not one that thinks more, it is one that thinks better, with more focus and less noise. Musashi practiced calligraphy, painting, sculpture, gardening, and of course swordsmanship. But all of these practices had one goal in common: mastery of the self. It wasn't just about developing skills, It was about training presence, focus, and mental toughness. This logic is incredibly applicable to modern times. In a world that values quick results and constant stimulation, silent training may seem pointless, but it is precisely this training that builds the mental foundation so that you are not overcome by excessive thoughts, distractions, or insecurities. And this training doesn't have to be epic. It can start with small things. Establish a clear morning routine. Practice 10 minutes of mindfulness a day. Complete tasks without jumping from one to another. Write down your thoughts every day to organize your mind. These small acts, repeated with intention, build discipline. And discipline is what allows clarity to emerge when we need it most. It is what sustains action, even when there is fear. It is what prepares us for the unpredictable, because the unpredictable always comes. Musashi said that one should not rely on motivation. He relied on preparation. And preparation only happens when we make practice a natural part of life, and not something reserved for when there is time. If this content is helping you see your thoughts in a different light, please like the video. This way, you support the continuation of this work and help more people find the same clarity. In the last chapter, we will close this journey with a powerful reflection. How can you apply all of this in your real life right now? It is time to integrate ideas and transform intention into practice. Become the warrior of your own mind. The mind can be our greatest ally or our greatest saboteur. Throughout this journey, we've seen how Miyamoto Musashi dealt with overthinking not with abstract theories, but with practice, with discipline, with focus. He didn't wait for clarity to act. He acted to find clarity. The first lesson was, act above doubt. Instead of waiting for guarantees, Musashi invites us to take the first step. Doubt grows when action is postponed, but if you move, even a little, the mind reorganizes itself around the gesture. The second lesson, detachment from the outcome. That when we are obsessed with what we are going to gain, we forget about the process. And it is in the process that true power lies. Musashi shows us that focusing on the now is the only point where we have real control. Everything beyond that is illusion. The third lesson, daily practice. Mental clarity is not a gift, it is an achievement. A disciplined mind is born of continuous effort, even on days when there is no motivation. Discipline sustains focus, and focus sustains peace. You don't have to be a 16th century warrior, but you can be a warrior for yourself. You can choose every day to cultivate inner silence, act with more awareness, and transform your thoughts into allies, not barriers. And make no mistake, this doesn't happen overnight. Musashi spent a lifetime perfecting his philosophy, but the first step is simple: act differently. At the end of this video, stop for a moment, observe your mind, and choose one small thing you can do right now, today, to move toward clarity. Maybe it's turning off your phone for 30 minutes, writing down a thought, resolving something you've been putting off. The important thing isn't the size of the action, it's the movement, because thinking stagnates, but movement heals. If this video helped you better understand your own mind, if these ideas resonated with something you experience or feel, subscribe to the channel. Here, we will always bring reflections that combine timeless wisdom with the practice of a lighter, more conscious, and powerful life. You are not alone on this journey. Thousands of people are seeking the same thing as you: more presence, less noise, more truth. And that is what we are going to build together. Remember, Musashi won 60 duels. You just need to win today.